All right, we're getting started with the psycho-emotional piece of this program, and we are going after the highest leverage techniques that we know how to use. And today, we're here just to create some context, get your mind wrapped around what's happening so that as we're going through the exercises this week, which is really where the meat is at, you'll know why we're doing it and what you're looking for. So our intention here is for the entire program is to become a leader. And first, you got to be able to lead yourself. And if that's the only person you lead, that's probably good enough. And I imagine that's what most of you really want more of. And so in this conversation, we're really going to split up into two main areas, and we're going to dissect and all that. And we're going to talk about the ego and the compassionate observer today. And of course, as we talk about the ego, that's a big subject. And most people, when they think about ego, they think about, someone who's thinks highly of themselves and all that. And the way it's commonly used in our everyday language is really incorrect and doesn't tell the whole story. And I hope that by the end of this presentation that you're going to have a much bigger handle on what ego actually is. And so some things to keep in mind as we start uncovering the ego. And one is it needs to be listened to and understood. There's nothing to fix with it, all right? So it's not broken. It's not something that needs to be fixed. And spoiler alert, it never goes away. I've worked with so many clients and they go, oh, I thought it was supposed to go away, or I heard about killing your ego and this and that. And it's like, well, sorry, but ego is going to be there till the day you die, and that's okay. We're going to learn how to work with it. And one of the keys to this is to stay curious about your ego. And I say them, and I think you'll start understanding why I put them in there. So there are many parts of the ego, and every person's ego has been assimilated in a very different way. If we just go to language and we think about how language creates our thoughts, and our thoughts are made up of language, and how we learn different words in different orders as we're growing up, and we tend to place different meanings on those words and have different emotional experiences of individual words, let alone entire sentences. So when we talk about the ego, we're really talking about a conditioning. It's a learning that holds identity, persona, aspects of trauma in the unconscious. So ego makes up a lot of who we think we are, okay? And so because ego makes up so much of who we think we are at times, we really need to divide and love. You've probably heard the term divide and conquer. Well, we're going to divide and love here because that's our way through. And so we're going to apply our concepts that if you've probably been introduced to already, which is the 3 I's. We're going to isolate, we're going to integrate, and then we're going to be able to improvise. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is isolate and break up the ego so that we can pull it apart and look at it. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to place the ego into one of these 3 categories as we're moving forward. You don't really need to worry about too much about where the parts of your ego fit in each one of these. It's all going to come together by the end of the 12 weeks or the 90 days. And so if you're feeling a little confused and you go, oh, I don't really know if this is really a manager, a firefighter, or an exiled, that's okay. Things are going to shift around as the course moves on, and you're going to get a better understanding of yourself. And I just want to cover, it's a great context for the next 90 days because we are going to be talking about each one of these. And I'll start off by talking about the first category of ego, which is the exiled. And the exiled typically sits outside of your awareness. And this is usually what people are talking about when they say it's in the shadow, or they're doing shadow work. They're working with the exiled parts of themselves. Now, the exiled parts of ego causes suffering. It experiences unlovability, shame, and guilt. This is usually why these things stay hidden. And tends to flood you with unwanted thoughts and feelings. So when it's triggered and when it starts to erupt, it brings in all those unwanted thoughts and feelings. And in order to deal with the exiled, we need to get permission from the part of the ego, which is the managers, in order to be able to touch them, right? If we try to touch these before we get permission from the manager, we're going to start a fire, and that's where the firefighters come in. So, I'll jump over here to manager first. The manager is really its main purpose is to keep the exiles exiled. So all this stuff over here that we keep hidden, our manager keeps them exiled. And it protects the exiles from the person and the whole system. A lot of what the manager does is it maintains feelings of safety and control. And, if you're not a control freak yourself, I'm sure that you know someone who is, so you get what I'm talking about here. The manager avoids discomfort, and the manager imprisons the exiles. It wants to make sure the exiles do not get out. If the exiles get out, we are in trouble. And this necessity of the manager, its job is to keep the exiled, which forces the manager into roles they don't like. Now, here's the thing. The manager is going to fail at some point, and usually fails quite a bit. And when the manager is unable to keep the exiled under control, that's when the firefighters come in. And the firefighter is triggered by exiled parts in order to come fix the problem, to save the day. These were coping mechanisms come in. And the firefighter dissociates the person from the exiled feelings with little regard of consequences to the methods. So this turns into addictive behaviors, addictive behaviors like porn, too much porn, too much food, binge eating, alcohol and drugs, doubling down on work, things like that. These addictive behaviors are triggered. And usually the firefighter, when it comes on board, is in conflict with the manager. So when the manager is in charge, it seems like life is okay. And the exiled gets out, the firefighter has to come in, and a lot of times what the firefighter needs to do to get this under control is actually in conflict with what the manager likes to do. So now there's another problem, right? And so this is why people experience, they got one problem, and then this causes a problem, and then that causes more shame or guilt, and they end up in this negative feedback loop where, they get into these negative loops, which I know everyone here is familiar with. I've ended up in them quite a bit myself. So this first month, so we've got about 3 months together. The first month, we're really going to focus on the manager. All right. So, we're not going to worry about the firefighter too much, and we can't touch the exiled because we need permission over here. And so the manager is going to be the easiest part of the ego to deal with and to build a relationship with. And then the firefighter is going to come next, and then we'll move back and we'll finally get to the exiled. And if we do it well, which we are going to do it well, by the time you get here, it won't be that big of a deal. Okay. So if that scares you, just know we're going to stair step our way in here. So here are different examples of what a manager may look like. So manager is just a bucket. It's a category. And inside of that category, we have all these different things that might be showing up. Someone who's controlling, the caretaker. This is somebody who is always looking out for other people and not looking after themselves. Someone who's hyper organized. And, if I stay organized, then, there won't be any chaos and the exiles won't be able to get out. Someone who's hyper analytical. Procrastination is also a part of the ego that might fall in that category. So these are all basically parts of ego that might fall into the manager role in that category. The planner, someone who's hypercritical, pessimist, people-pleasing, The perfectionists fall in this category, and the skeptical. So these are examples. There can definitely be many more parts of the ego that would fall into the manager category. These are an example. If you want to name it something different, because we're going to do an exercise tomorrow where you're going to name the parts of yourself, and it doesn't need to fit into the language we're using here, but really just list off all the ways in which you are, and when you get the exercise, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I talked a lot about the ego. The ego being has a lot of parts. We put those parts in the categories of exiled, firefighter, and manager. And most people are living inside of the ego and are assuming that the ego is who they are. So our goal here is to help you move into the compassionate observer. That's where we want to not only be sitting for as we're taking the world in and situations in, and as we're tapping into our five senses, and where the electricity is sending the brain messages, and we're making sense of the world, but our emotions, what are we experiencing there? What are our thoughts? The compassionate observer can observe all of those things. The compassionate observer is not a thought. Everything in the ego are thoughts. The compassionate observer watches, and the compassionate observer can and does intervene. It does take action, but it does it from a place of love. And the compassionate observer, which we're going to practice sitting in that seat, this is who you really are. Self, seat of consciousness. So when you talk to any of these or listen to these yogis, these gurus, they're talking about sitting in the seat of the observer, the compassionate observer. And this part of you, this not just part of you, this is who you really are. The ego has parts, but this is really who you are. The compassionate observer is the mediator between all parts. And it meets all the parts with love. It doesn't come in with judgment. Now, the really cool thing about the compassionate observer is it's fully equipped to lead. No training necessary. And this is why this type of leadership training is the best. Lead yourself first, is because if we tap into the compassionate observer, you really don't need all those tactics and tricks and all that. It will come naturally. You'll be able to lead yourself, and naturally people will want to follow you because, well, you have figured something out, especially when you're leading from love. So this week, we're going to begin to uncover the manager, and we're going to continue to uncover the manager. We're going to build a relationship with the manager. We're going to have conversations with the manager, and that's a lot of what we're going to work on in the first week. And that conversation is going to continue as we get into the body, relationships, and the environment as well. But this week, this is where we're really focusing. We're going to be doing a lot of journaling. You're going to do a little bit of drawing. And so tomorrow you're going to draw yourself a picture. You're going to label some things. And you're really going to sit there for 30 minutes, and you're going to focus on this one exercise. And every day the exercises are going to unfold, and it's going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And we're going to stair step our way in to a really beautiful experience where you get to energize and sit in the seat of the observer on a more regular basis. So good luck with the work. And remember, you can always hit us up if you need any help. We're there in the Facebook group and on the coaching call. I'll see y'all next week.